Yahoo Fantasy Football, the Tucson Tackle Dummies League has completed Week 2 of the 2011 season. This is Eric with your week recap. This week's video brought to you by the new Foo Fighters album, Wasting Light, an excellent album that you should all pick up. And also, I want everybody in this league to go join my Fantasy Hockey League. It needs teams. You'll like it. It's fun. It's hockey. Nobody in the league knows anything about hockey. We just play because we like the players' last names and trying to pronounce them. If you want to join that hockey league, before I lose all of your attention, the group ID is 3683, and the password you can get from me personally either through the league page or on Facebook. I'm not actually going to announce that on the internet. I don't want weird internet people that we've maybe run into in the past deciding to join this league. So we're going to go ahead and get into things with the Aztec division, kicking things off in Week 2. Navajos knocked off White Powerade 131.21 to 127.08 in the closest matchup of the week. Navajos gets out of the gate 2-0 after holding off a late surge by White Powerade in the week's closest matchup. Navajos used modest but consistent scoring, turning in 8 players above projections, led by a game-high 17.05 from Devery Henderson at wide receiver. This was a much-needed performance at wide receiver, considering Hines Ward and Anquan Bolden combined for just 9.65 points for Navajos this week at wide receiver. Navajos also got a great showing at running back, where Matt Forte and Tim Hightower combined for 30.95 points. Powerade had a formidable counterattack on offense with 6 players in double digits, led by 16.13 from now injured quarterback Michael Vick. But running back LaDainian Tomlinson scored just 1.75, and wide receiver Brandon Lloyd scored nothing for White Powerade. Defense was a narrow victory for Navajos, as linebacker Sean Lee scored 10 points. Powerade tallied 19.5 at defensive back, but was brought down by the San Diego defense and their -3 score this week in losing to the New England Patriots. In the other Aztec division matchup, the Amazons knocked off Mojo Jojo 188.42 to 124.95. This was the week's most lopsided victory, despite a high score from both teams. Amazons set a new league scoring record while knocking off last week's highest scorer in the process. Amazons had 10 players above projections and 4 players over 20 points, with an impressive offensive onslaught. Amazons made up for Ricky Williams at running back, scoring -1.8 by scoring 74.55 points from Darren McFadden, Peyton Hillis, and Javid Best. And that wasn't even the team high individually, as 28.01 came in from quarterback Matthew Stafford as he torched the Kansas City Chiefs. Mojo Jojo posted a solid score, led by 22.57 from Aaron Rodgers at quarterback, but was unable to keep up with lackluster scores from Vernon Davis and Reggie Bush, and a 0 out of Plaxico Burress this week. Amazons won the defensive battle with 12 from the Green Bay defense and 10.5 from Antwell Roll. Mojo had 13 from the Houston defense and 10.08 from defensive back Ladarius Webb, but got outscored at defensive line and linebacker when it was all said and done. Moving to the Wildcat division, Big Ben's Revenge knocked off Lombardi's Ghost 130.09 to 114.63. A game-high 30.77 from Tom Brady just wasn't enough for Lombardi this week, as Big Ben overcame 2 zeros on offense to take the win. A team-high 20.85 from running back Michael Turner, and wide receiver Mike Wallace's 20.6 covered the donuts posted by Michael Crabtree and Patrick Creighton for Big Ben. Lombardi didn't have much beyond Brady, as only 2 other players broke double digits and 6 players scored under 3 points this week. Jason Snelling at running back had just 1.05. Defensive lineman Julius Peppers had just 1, and the Buffalo defense turned in a -1 for Lombardi, and what can only be described as a frustrating performance all around. Big Ben sealed the deal by adding 22.5 at defensive back from Rashawn Mathis and Antoine Winfield. And in the redundancy department of redundancy, Inglorious Bearju defeated Championship Cheese 179.86 to 138.63. Bearju secured a 4th consecutive victory over Cheese, riding a wave of impressive performances. Quarterback Ryan Fitzpatrick led the way with 25.26. Bearju's 4 running backs combined for 58.15, with nearly half of that coming from LaShawn McCoy and his 24.6 points. Cheese countered with a team-high 18.6 from the now traded-away Stevie Johnson and 17.84 from the now benched quarterback Sam Bradford. Cheese trading away Stevie Johnson for Kevin Cobb this week in a trade with What the Shell. But Antonio Gates punched a blank on the scoreboard for Cheese this week, and Deshaun Jackson at wide receiver managed just 3.72 points. This made it impossible to keep up with Bearjuice's 14.65 from Jordy Nelson and 13.95 from tight end Aaron Hernandez. On defense, Cheese's 14 from the New Orleans defense was topped by a whopping 22 from the Detroit defense for Inglorious Bearju. Moving over to the Cabs division, Wildcats knocked off Angry Arthritis 179.44 to 132.35. Perennial powerhouse Arthritis is now 0-2 after a tough loss to Wildcats and his balanced attack. Wildcats had a game-high 34.35 from Miles Austin to go with Adrian Peterson's 27.6, Matt Schaub's 18.45, and Jason Witten's 11.95, proving that they could score at all four key offensive positions. Arthritis had a team-high 26.5 from Fred Jackson at running back, but just one other offensive player above projections, and a combined 1.7 at the flex from Mike Williams and Lance Moore was not going to get it done this week. Wildcats kept the balanced attack going on defense with 13 points from the New York Giants defense and an additional 13 from Roman Harper, outdoing Arthritis overall on defense despite Arthritis scoring 26.5 at defensive back with Charles Woodson and Dante Whitner. What the Shell knocked off Raging Boners 146.2 to 97.39. Boners had a game-high 30.98 from rookie QB Cam Newton, but who knew he'd wind up getting nearly a third of his points from that one player when all was said and done, as Boners posted the week's lowest score. Santana Moss was the only other player for Raging Boners to beat projections this week, scoring 13.35. Jamal on the offensive side of the ball. Jamal Charles went down for the season after posting just 2.7 for Raging Boners, and Chris Cooley at tight end scored nothing, while the Baltimore defense for Raging Boners managed just 1 point, and no one on the entire defensive side of the ball scored more than 4.5 points this week. Shell did take the opportunity to avoid underachieving, however, by basically dominating with a 24.3 at quarterback from Drew Brees, a 20.35 from Ryan Matthews at running back. Shell didn't have any defensive players in double digits this week, but still managed to beat Boners on that side of the ball by 22 points. And in the Toro division, AZ Chargers is undefeated after knocking off Greek Thunderball 175.07 to 151.95. A huge overachieving performance by Greek still wasn't enough to catch AZ Chargers this week. Greek beat the team projection by over 40 points and still lost by 24. Once again, the dismal defensive lineup for Greek was his undoing, losing the opportunity to score any points at linebacker with two inactives starting, while defensive lineman Luis Castillo was projected no points and scored no points. These two teams really did slug it out on the offensive side, though. Greek had a game-high 32.45 out of Jeremy Maclin. AZ Chargers countered with 31.7 from Vincent Jackson at wide receiver. There was a great quarterback battle on this one. AZ Chargers picked up the win, though, with Phillip Rivers outscoring Ben Roethlisberger 21.77 to 17.82. Despite the defensive deficiencies, the real difference in this battle may have been tight end, as AZ Chargers scored 21.6 out of Rob Gronkowski, while Greek scored just 0.95 from Brandon Pettigrew. And in the final matchup of the week, with more lineup dysfunction, Mustache Discount knocked off Viva Football 145.5 to 106.43. Viva never stood a chance attempting Week 2 without a player in the wide receiver 2 slot for no apparent reason. Add to that an inactive linebacker, and again, we're talking about lost opportunities. It may not have mattered anyway, with Mustache getting a game-high 22.8 from Tony Romo and 21.75 from wide receiver Kenny Britt. Viva's Swiss cheese lineup couldn't contend, even with 21 points from the New York Jets defense, and still not having a healthy Arian Foster. didn't help the cause, as Viva tallied just 4.5 from the #1 pick before he went down to injury again. Speaking of injury, Mustache lost their 3rd defensive player to a season-ending injury just 2 weeks into the season, as linebacker Thomas Davis scored 3.5 points before tearing his ACL. Moving to next week's schedule, moving into the Wildcats division, all 4 teams are 1-1 at this point. Cheese meets Ghost, and Bearju meets Big Ben. In the Cabs division, 2-0, What the Shell will meet 0-2, Angry Arthritis, in what can only be considered a marquee matchup and probably the most important matchup of the season for Angry Arthritis at this point, as Shell could get out to a real big lead in that division with a win in that one. And then 1-1 Wildcats will meet 1-1 Boners in the other Cabs division matchup. In the Aztec division, 2-0 Navajos will take on 1-1 Mojo Jojo, and 0-2 Powerade will take on 1-1 Amazons. And moving to the Toro division, probably the best matchup of the week, the most anticipated, is going to be Mustache Discount taking on AZ Chargers. These 2 teams are 2-0, and someone's got to lose. And in the someone's got to win battle of the week, Viva Football will take on Greek Thunderball. Both those teams go into Week 3 without a win. So we'll see you back next week for your Week 3 recap in the Tucson Tackle Dummies League.